Hi, everyone. This is Megan.
And this is Steven.
And this is the Synchrony Podcast, where we talk about transforming apostolic dating culture and ending loneliness in the church. And Steven's now going to take his cursory sip of coffee.
Yep.
Every time, as soon as we start the recording, you're like, now is the moment when I must slurp.
It's true. Mainly because there is a period of time while you're doing your intro that I don't want to just stare at the camera
Awkwardly.
smiling at that camera awkwardly, because I look at other people that do that. And so I'm like, well, let me at least accomplish something productive.
It's fair. Yeah, while we're accomplishing things, we should talk about our friends at Cafe 117.
Yeah.
If you don't know them yet, then you should watch more episodes of the Synchrony podcast or listen to us. They're an apostolic-owned coffee company. They sell premium, single origin, and blended coffees. You can get yours on subscription, mailed to you at the link down below with a little discount.
That's right. It is solid coffee.
Solid coffee, which I am drinking later than normal. I'm going to give myself permission to stay up a little bit later tonight.
Yeah, you've been waking up at like 5:15 every morning.
I have begun a new gym habit, as one does in the early part of the year, but it feels good to get back to the gym.
Yeah, I've been enjoying it myself.
Yeah, it's been nice to I'm sore, I can't bend over very much today.
Yeah.
It's amazing what your body will do when you just sit for 2 years.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm enjoying the gym strictly because of the gains I'm trying to go for, or just because it's a few moments of silence.
I just enjoy taking a shower where no one interrupts me.
Yeah.
And I sat in the sauna for a few minutes today, which was just a quiet, silent, dark wooden box.
Yeah, even if other people are in there, no one's talking.
No one's talking. It's delightful.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to talk about last weekend.
Yeah. Fantastic weekend.
It was a really great weekend. For people who don't know, what are we talking about?
We went to the Texas District Singles Conference,
which was amazing. For those of you who might not be familiar with this, the UPCI has a single adult ministry called SAM.
SAM.
For short. And there are district, chapters, departments, SAM departments across the country, but not every district has one.
Yep.
Florida does not have a single adult ministry chapter. There are many other districts that don't have one in their local district or a district close by. Texas has an incredible SAM ministry.
Oh, it was amazing.
Yeah. Brother and Sister Carter are kind of the face of that. And they are really setting just an incredible standard, I think, for how singles ministry should be done.
Oh, yeah.
You could tell they were involved in every part of the conference. They had a great team supporting them, but they had their hands on so many pieces of it. And they just ooze passion about this ministry.
Yeah. The thing is what I thought was beautiful, and I guess we'll get into it more later, but almost every person that spoke or preached was coming from a period of singleness when they weren't expecting to be there, whatever flavor that may look like.
Yeah.
And the amount of emotion and zeal and passion and love that came from them was just intoxicating.
Yeah. So I'm gonna I want to frame this reflection. We don't come up with titles for these podcasts usually beforehand, but in my mind, the title of this one is The Truth About Singles Conferences.
Yeah.
And what I want to do is really unpack the preconceived notions I had before we went to the singles conference, and then what we learned about it and what those basically what those things mean for people who were considering involvement.
Yep.
Cool. What surprised you?
This is going to sound weirdly shallow.
Okay.
But almost like I was expecting a layer of gloom to be over the place.
Interesting.
And I know that sounds weird, like, oh, we're going to a conference where the Spirit of the Lord is, so there shouldn't
Yeah.
be that gloominess, right? But in terms of like, I hate to relate this because I have not like personally been in an extended singleness, right? Especially when I wasn't expecting to be in. Like the only way I had to relate to it was like going to church camp when you wanted to be with someone, right?
Yeah.
I know that sounds infantile, but like I'm talking about like the like 17, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old church camp that you have. And that's usually where it ends, is like 20, 21 years old,
Yeah.
right? Where you're really starting to think about marriage. You're starting to think about life. You're starting to think about your future, and you might not have someone. And you're like, man, I really want someone. Right. And so like, I almost had, for myself personally, like would almost go and feel that way because I almost felt like my chances of finding someone were so slim, even in an area that was full of singles.
Yeah. That's interesting because it definitely was not gloomy. I mean,
No, not at all.
it was the atmosphere of this conference. This was the main thing that surprised me. I wasn't expecting gloom, but I was not expecting the powerful move that we had.
Yes.
And that's nothing against conferences in general. And I guess another way to frame it is I was not expecting to be moved by this conference the way that I was.
Yeah.
And it when I got there, after we'd been there for like a day, it hit me like the reason why it was so obvious. I mean, besides the fact that like all the team had been working so hard to prepare for it and everyone had been fasting and praying and the church was so supportive. The whole conference was full of people who had dug their heels in and stayed in the church, stayed grounded in their faith.
Yep.
Despite all the challenges that come with singleness. And we're not just talking about loneliness, because loneliness and a desire for a partner is what you and I spend most of our time talking to people about. But there are so many other complicating factors of singleness, like the financial challenges of it and the emotional difficulties just by social isolation, right? The ministerial challenges of singleness. Like, the people who were there are the people who have stayed against all odds.
Yeah.
And, the image I had in my mind was like, like the pictures of like Prometheus holding up the earth, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're so strong because of what they've had to carry. And I wish that they weren't carrying that. Some of them had suffered tremendous loss. Some of them were dealing with profound estrangement from loved ones and family as a result of divorce or loss or all kinds of different reasons. And yet they were there.
Yeah.
And the atmosphere was the most, like, one of the most free spiritually and high faith atmospheres I have been in a very long time.
Yeah. It was beautiful.
Yeah. I came away from it with the same feeling that I would come away from like Youth Congress, which is like thousands and thousands and thousands of people packed into an arena, and you just can't be around that much Holy Ghost and not come away feeling absolutely moved.
Yeah.
There was a fraction of the number of people at this conference.
I think Brother Tripp said like over 400.
Yeah, which is an amazing turnout, but a fraction of the number compared to the tens of thousands that showed up to Youth Congress. And yet I came away feeling a similar, if not greater level of refreshing.
Yeah.
It was insane.
I think, so in my experience, when I was younger, anytime we had a singles talk or a singles conference of some flavor, it was generally done. And so that I keep on harping on this. Like, it felt like it was done by someone who was like asked to talk about being single. And talking to singles about singleness. Yeah. But someone who did not have the experience of being single. And so it felt like disingenuous. Like it felt not forced. And for sure. And don't get me wrong, what the people said still had power and still had the Holy Ghost behind it. but there wasn't a understanding.
Yeah.
And so what was so beautiful about this conference was the people leading it, the people running it, the speakers were all very intentional about how they spoke and who they spoke to and the way they spoke. It was beautiful. And the amount of like someone holding their heart out in front of you and being vulnerable and like giving you a look into their life that they didn't share with everyone, but the people that they were sharing with understood what they were going through. It was just, I guess vulnerability is the word.
Yeah, everyone showed up with the attitude of like, I have nothing to hide.
Yeah.
I'm here with my people. Like, that's what it felt like. Like that was, people had found their tribe, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And people were so supportive of each other and praying with each other and lifting each other up. And I have to say, like, it was beautiful to see all those people in person. A lot of them are friends who have connected online. It was great to see our people that were there. If you were there during the conference, it was so nice to see you in person and hug you and like talk to you. Thank you for taking the time to let us talk to you and hang out with you.
It really made Synchrony feel tangible. And not in the sense that like what we're doing is tangible. Like we know we're impacting, we know we are putting our hearts out on the line for people and like really trying to reach into people's lives. But being able to physically hug people and see people, and people were so kind with their words
and
encouraging, and it was just a really cool experience.
Yeah, it was amazing. I want to shout out, I could rattle off a dozen names right now of people that we connected with, and each of you, like, after we left the conference, we were gushing about everyone we talked to. I mean, it was amazing. I do want to give a special shout out to Brother Tim Matthews.
Yeah.
Because he got up at like 2 a.m. on Saturday, which was the last day of the conference. He wasn't able to make it to the Thursday night or Friday.
Because he lived like 4+ hours away.
Yeah, he lived a long way away. So he got up extremely early in the morning and drove all the way over on Saturday morning to participate in the last service of the conference, which I'm so glad he was there, just because the sermon was just incredibly blessed and the worship was blessed.
Well, he came to participate, but his main goal was he said he came to meet us and talk to us.
There's this great funny story that he walked in and we happened to not be in the sanctuary at that point. Like I had to run out to take a phone call. And you, I think, were coming back from the restroom or something. And we weren't there for the first few minutes when he walked in, and he was like, they stood me up. He was so funny. And we hung out and got to sit with him and hear more about his experiences. I just felt like I came away with with the collection of jewels, that were like stories and experiences from people that I've only ever talked to over a video call.
Yeah.
So that was beautiful. We kind of got off topic of like expectations.
I know. The whole conference was just, so it blew our expectations out of the water.
Yeah. One thing that I expected that I never heard, and in hindsight, it was very ignorant of me to expect this and presumptuous of me. I expected to hear bad dating advice from pulpits.
I did too.
And
I really did too.
Because that's the stereotype, right? Like, most of the people.
Well, we've heard it over the pulpit.
We have heard it over our pulpits.
But we had separate pulpits. So like, and not necessarily like our personal home pulpits. Maybe it did, but also the events we went to, we have heard it.
Yeah, like we've heard, the wait on the Lord, like, all the tropes, right?
Yeah, sure.
The cliches. And I was expecting some of those to show up, and they did not.
Not at all.
No, we went to one session, and it was, I went to the session. It was specifically geared toward women over 30 who had never been married.
Okay.
And the speaker, with such delicacy and wisdom, broke down, and again with that vulnerability, right? Like what it felt like to be, a single person in her 30s and then in her 40s, and the challenge that it was to maintain her faith in that, and how she took it upon herself to prepare herself in faith for a future relationship. It was incredible, and
Yeah.
it was beautiful advice. And again, I think it's because they chose speakers who lived the experience.
Yeah. But like even the Carters,
Mm-hmm.
like they haven't been married for that long.
Yeah.
Like from
In
their
the big scheme of things.
in the big scheme of things. And like they were passionate about singles ministry prior to their new marriage, right?
Right.
And so you can see the amount of love that oozed off of them the whole time.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I want to talk about some observations that I made.
Yep.
And this is me kind of stepping out of just like conference attendant hat and putting on my like anthropologist hat.
Yeah.
So when you're studying anthropology and religious studies, one of the techniques that you learn about is called participant observation, right? Which is basically, it's something that if you're an anthropologist, which is a person that's studying a culture, you'll go immerse yourself in that culture and you're fully participating, but you're also trying to notice patterns that might not be readily apparent to people that are just used to the environment, right? So one of the things that I noticed that I thought was interesting was that all of the speakers were married people.
Yes.
And most of them had, like you said, they had gone through some very challenging experience of singleness. So some had been widowed tragically. Some had been in extended singleness. Some had gone through a divorce. Some had experienced a combination of those things, which is incredible. And so they had those experiences to lean on, but all of them had reached marriage. And it was very clear, like the goal of the speakers was never to sell people false encouragement about getting married, right? They were not there to tell people, every one of you, God's going to send you a spouse. But at the same time, the testimonies that they were celebrating involved God bringing them partners.
Yeah.
And the gift of that. And I think that's an important thing, like they had walked the walk that singles had gone through and come out on the other side and were pointing back to their marriage as a blessing, right? And again, there are singles who do not need to get married. So this is not me saying that like that's the goal every single should strive for. But it was just interesting that was a component of it, right?
Yeah.
They were quick to acknowledge the fact that most people wanted to be married. Even if they weren't ready to date, that was sort of a background conversation, right?
Yeah.
The other thing I noticed was the gender breakdown of the conference.
What did you notice?
So it was probably not going to surprise anyone that there were more women than men in attendance at the conference, right? What's fascinating is the positioning of where the men and women stood and how they interacted with the space. So imagine, there's this beautiful sanctuary, right, with several sections of seating, kind of in that like half moon, sort of like seashell arrangement around the platform, right? Very common in a lot of churches. The center sections were almost entirely filled with women. Men tended to position themselves in the outer sections or toward the back, right?
There were the few outliers that were near the front, but yeah.
A couple. If I were to draw a map of like red and blue, right?
It would be very edge.
Yeah, the blue would be around the edge. And then the red would fill up everything in the middle. And in the altar, it was the same a lot of the time. Not always.
Not always, but a lot of the time.
Yeah, there was movement in the altar. But
we're talking specifically single men.
Yeah, because there were married men there.
Yeah.
Either who, most of them were in the ministry there to serve. And honestly, like, it was really beautiful. There were so many married couples there just to serve. Like, they were there to support their saints and to clean up and to move tables and to just be hands, which was incredible. But so, putting them aside, taking them out of the equation, a lot of the men in the space stuck to the perimeter. And I noticed this I thought was really interesting. In the section of women in the middle, there was so much movement and so much laying on of hands, right? Women were connecting with each other. They were praying with each other. They were encouraging each other. There was this strong sense of like sisterhood.
Yeah.
I did not get that same dynamic from the guys as much. Did you feel like that's accurate? Were you kind of paying attention to that?
No, I was. You're right.
Yeah. Not that anyone is being standoffish, just that.
Yeah, but I mean, even at men's conferences, like you have that brotherhood feel, but
Mm-hmm.
it's after you are. It's when you're predominantly in a male setting, and the vulnerability is able to come out a little bit more because there's not the opposite sex there.
That's what I was gonna say. It felt like men. If I had, this is me guessing at what they were experiencing, but they felt more guarded. A little bit.
Possibly.
We don't know what they were
we don't
feeling.
know what they're feeling, but possibly.
In terms of just how they were, where they were, and how they were acting. And this isn't every single guy in attendance, right? But it was a space where the single women felt like they seemed more at liberty, let's put it that way, than all the guys that were there. And there were lots of guys who were there, so I'm not trying to say that this was an all women's conference with a handful of guys sprinkled in. But
depending on the night,
depending
on the service, I mean, there was anywhere between a 4-to-1 to about a 7-to-1 ratio.
Yeah,
there was a pretty bit stark, and which made me feel, I don't want to say it made me feel better, but like, because we were concerned about our synchrony ratios, right? We're like, man, this is kind of stark. It's kind of crazy. But even the singles conference kind of showed that same or similar ratio.
Well, and I talked to someone about it, and now I can't remember who I was having this conversation with. It might have been someone when we went out to eat at one point. But they were talking about how they think it's because men are hesitant to participate in singles ministry because of that vulnerability. You know, like my theory, this is a theory, I don't have data to back this up, is that there are not significantly more single women than men. My theory is that there are unseen barriers to men's participation in singles focused ministry. And I think some of those barriers are probably economic. I think some of them have to do with just expectations and, like a lot of the executive function about getting a group together at a church and planning an event and making everyone go. Women are trained to do that from a very young age. I don't know that our guys are, right? There's a coordination component of it that I think women are primed for in church. But also, I think, and this conference made it abundantly clear to me, there is a need to go into those vulnerable.
Yeah.
In order to be touched and really ministered to.
Yeah. I do have to say, though, to defend the men that were there, when we were in the men's session, which I do want to circle back around to that, there was more vulnerability there.
Yeah, in a male space.
In a male space with other men, and it was beautiful and it was awesome. But that being said, the day that we had, I think it was the Friday morning, we had split sessions in the morning.
Yeah.
Out of the 4 split sessions, the guys had to go to their one class. Right. And this is not knocking the conference. I'm just saying, like, this was just more of like expectations for the guys. I'm assuming is like, there is generally speaking less resources for the men to be able to like search on like classes based on their interests, when we were kind of pigeonholed and bottlenecked. I don't know where I was going.
Pigeons don't have noses.
No, they don't. I don't know where I was going with that.
They have beaks.
I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. But basically, like, there wasn't as many classes that were specifically for men.
Yeah.
There were 3 classes that women could choose to go to that were specifically for women, because they said that the guys had to go to that one class because the other ones were for women to be more vulnerable and transparent.
Yeah, at least they strongly encourage guys to go to that class.
No, they didn't give us an option.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't remember that language.
Yeah, they
but-
basically said, "All right, all guys go to that class. No one else can stay in here." No,
Okay.
that was like even married men. Everyone had to go.
Yeah. And what I think you're saying, is important. Like, I think what this is illustrating, and I think the Carters recognize this, there's such a need for male-focused singles ministry.
Yeah.
And they're doing, like, their district has a bunch of amazing stuff going on. They've got, like, a guys only, like, I think, like, a camping and retreat weekend coming up.
Yeah, which I think is awesome.
It's incredible.
If we lived in Texas, I would want to go.
Yeah, for sure. There need to be spaces for male singles specifically. And men's conference might not be doing that enough, like just general men's conference.
Yeah. Because
you're there with married guys and guys who are in relationships and just not experiencing the same walk that you're in.
Sure.
So I think,
So, I mean, to give the conference the benefit of the doubt, though.
Yeah.
Right. They're probably looking at people signing up and the genders of the people who are signing up and saying, oh, we have a 6-to-1 ratio of women to men.
Yeah.
We need more classes available for women just for like capacity's sake.
Right.
So like I understand that there's more logistical reasons for that. But when I go to any conference, married or single conference, I kind of expect there to be less classes for men no matter what we go to.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Just at a high level.
If it has to be split up into guys and girls, I expect there to be less. And that just might be my bias, my own personal bias.
Yeah.
Or in just my lack of experience in some areas, but like that's just kind of my expectation.
That's interesting. I think, ultimately like the sessions that they chose and the speakers that they chose were really well selected.
Oh, it was fantastic. And I heard nothing but positive reviews.
Yeah. Every one of them, again, like just had this wisdom that they poured out. I wish I could have gone to every session. Like having to pick was hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was interesting to see how the men were interacting in the space. And I want to just give kudos to the guys who were there participating fully, because there were some who really did come and were vulnerable and they were there to really receive. And that was exciting to see too, for the guys who were able to kind of like maybe step out of their comfort zone a little bit, and kind of just take advantage of that. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say something that we've said before.
Yeah.
That I think is really important. Singles ministry at a high level is not about dating.
Yeah.
Singles ministry is about supporting and sustaining and preserving the spiritual walk of people who are in singleness.
Yeah, ministering to the single.
Yeah, and because we heard 1,000 different examples of why that season is remarkably challenging for people.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is difficult to live alone in our society today, just logistically, right? Not like set aside, the whole struggle of faith and everything else. Like, it's just hard to survive as a single person. Singles ministry is an encouragement. It is a vital source of encouragement and compassion and camaraderie and spiritual renewal for people walking in that specific season. And I want to just like be very blunt about this and say, like, what we do at the Synchrony Project is never ever intended to undermine the efficacy of singles ministry.
Absolutely not. To
detract from it. Singles ministry is saving people.
Yeah.
Like,
literally and physically.
Yeah, literally in the sense that like they've had people pray through to the Holy Ghost, but which is incredible. Like, but also, it we just put out our From Singles to Shepherds survey, and loneliness is actively drawing people away from the church. And while I don't think one weekend of conference is going to solve loneliness, right? Singles ministries are a absolutely vital component and an incredible tool in the toolkit of the church to help, right? It is so important. It is not about dating.
Mm-mm.
The goal of singles ministry is not to make singles become married. The goal of singles ministry is, while people are in the single season, to keep them close to the throne. Okay, so that being said, dating happens at singles conferences
Yeah.
because everyone is single.
Yeah.
Everyone except for the married people that snuck in the back door. But I just want to say again, it is not an ideal space for dating.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful to organizers that create opportunities for people to mingle.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic. It's great when there are like social elements to the conference where people can just like hang out, right? But again, unless you have a very, very specific personality type, a singles conference is not an ideal place for most people to connect with someone. And there was, probably the main like sort of like connection and networking opportunity at this conference was there was kind of like an after party at one point, like an afterburner, and everyone went and hung out at a hotel.
Oh, the hotel lobby.
Yeah. And the main space where people were kind of like interacting and getting to know each other. As an introvert, I walked into the room, married, whatever, and was immediately overwhelmed, right?
Yeah.
And it was so funny because like at one point, a client, a Synchrony, community member, came over and we were hanging out, and she and I both like had pressed ourselves up against the wall as far as we could into the wall, and we're like leaning on it and chatting and forming our own little bubble of conversation, which is where I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
And I had the thought cross my mind that if I were a single person here trying to meet someone, I'd be up a creek because all I wanted to do was like become one with the wall,
Yeah.
I was so socially overwhelmed.
Yeah.
It was insane. And it was late at night and I was tired, and we just had this epic church service and everyone was tired. And so it's hard for me to imagine putting myself in the mindset of someone who is single, or myself as a single person there. It's hard for me to imagine having the courage to get to know someone in that setting.
Well, having the courage, but also recognizing that, especially if you work a full-time job, especially if you have responsibilities, you are going to college, right? Whatever that may be, this might be your only opportunity to meet someone outside of your immediate circles.
Right. Your district or your...
Yeah. So I can see where the pressure to go outside of your personality like zone would be very difficult.
Yeah. So I think I hope that tons of people met someone who's a prospect. And I think, again, like, I don't think we should ever try to discourage people from meeting each other at singles conferences or getting to know each other in those settings.
Yeah.
I think if you can, you should. Right.
Yeah.
And, we encourage people to do things like wear sync pins and to use our conversation guide to get started and to build the skills that you would need to walk into a setting like that with some confidence.
Yeah.
Because it is a great opportunity. But again, I just came away feeling like this is not the right space.
Yeah.
I
want to have a quick intermission.
Okay.
An intermission is the right word.
Interjection.
I'm very proud of you, by the way.
Yeah.
Because you just got done talking about how you wanted to become one with the wall. That is Megan in most social settings, right? Like if it is, if there's
quietest, darkest corner,
if it's more than 8 people, like she's like, her battery goes down really fast.
Yeah.
Me, I thrive in those moments. Like I'm like, I can talk to anyone. I can walk up to anyone and talk to anyone.
Yeah.
But this whole conference, the amount of energy you had was like, I almost didn't recognize my wife.
I had energy until we got back to the Airbnb, and then I turned into like
a potato, but still
an absolute potato.
But still, no, but like you did things in terms of like, you did things you normally wouldn't do in social settings because of how excited you were to be there.
Yeah.
Especially because like, I mean, we definitely had some Synchrony clients there and it was fun to really get to meet people in person, but also like, again, the atmosphere made it easy to do this.
Yeah.
But I just want to acknowledge that you're awesome. And I saw how passionate you were about this because you just were glowing the whole time until you got back to the Airbnb until you turned into a potato and went to bed.
Deflated.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. I mean, like, as an introvert, it is hard to be on for that
Yeah.
long.
Yeah.
Like, I was, by the end of it, I was like, okay, like, we are going to have a silent plane ride home. But yeah, I mean, I was on cloud nine the whole time because I felt like, I might get a little bit emotional about this part.
Go for it.
Which is par for the course for this point in the podcast, I think. The thing about singles ministry is that, in my experience so far, like, everything we pour in is poured back over us, if that makes sense. Like,
can you explain?
Yeah, like, I am passionate about people getting out of loneliness, right? I am passionate about people being able to cultivate the lives that they feel called to and change the church. And I'm passionate about having a healthy dating culture. I'm passionate about values-driven couples that are serving the kingdom together.
Yeah.
And I pour a lot into, both of us do, I think. We pour a lot into those passions. It is returned to us tenfold by the singles that we work with.
Yeah.
And the number of times last weekend did that, I was just like overwhelmed with how beautiful and powerful these people are, how dedicated they are to their walk, how service and servant minded they are. There wasn't a single person that we talked to from our community that was like, they were like, if there's anything I can do to help, if there's anything I can do, I've been telling people about this. I've been, I want people to know more about this. How can we support you? And over again, we had people come up and pray for us and lay hands on us and just bless us and bless this ministry. And I came away from the conference feeling like my cup was absolutely overflowing and that I got more than I deserved to get out of the experience, because this was not a conference about us.
Yeah.
But I just came away so full and encouraged in this work.
Yeah.
Because like, you and I don't have all the answers to how we're solving this loneliness problem, and you and I cannot do it by ourselves.
Mm-mm.
And what I saw and heard from this weekend of just being surrounded by these incredible people is that they are bought in and they are, so willing to serve and to connect and to just support us. And I'm so grateful for that. It feels like more than we deserve. And I get a little weepy about it. And I feel like I've made friends.
That too.
It's hard for me to do.
Yeah.
At this time in my life.
Again, become one with the wall.
Yeah, it feels.
No, Megan's amazing in like one-on-one interactions or like
Yeah.
one-on-two, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like we definitely left this weekend with our cups full.
Yeah.
And again, it wasn't about that. But I just think we weren't expecting it,
I was not expecting to have my life changed by this conference, and I came away with some life-changing revelations. Every message.
It was so good.
And I'm like sitting here going like, I am not the core audience that this message is for.
Yeah.
And yet it just cut through so much noise to like the heart of what we're trying to do.
Speaking of that, can we put links in the bio for the messages if we have them?
If we'll go see what's available on YouTube and try to link it. Because everyone would benefit from hearing them. Oh my word.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're single or not, but specifically for singles, it was perfect. But like, anyone can get something from these things.
Yeah.
I feel like we keep on falling back to talk about how amazing the conference was, and it was. But I want to talk about just give some shout outs to some of the guys that I talked to. I met some really cool men and just got to get to know different people. And I think the authenticity that came from them, and they're not perfect people.
Sure.
You know, and they weren't trying to be someone that they weren't.
Yeah.
And I think that's what was so cool about it. And
you got a game of disc golf in.
I did. Arrington, you are the man.
No, you have to tell the story.
Okay.
This is so on brand for Steven.
I have to start this off with thank you for giving me your pants.
You're wearing them right now.
I actually am wearing Arrington. These are your pants. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so
context.
Me and Arrington and a group of people from his church, all went to go play around a disc golf after the Saturday session.
Right, because Steven is going to find a disc golf park in every place that he visits.
Yes, it's kind of a bucket list item of mine to visit at least two disc golf courses in every state in the country. Yeah. I think that'd be a really cool bucket list item. I would love to visit more than that, but at least two. And so I ended up mentioning something about disc golf over lunch when I was sitting next to Arrington. He's like, "You play disc golf? I used to play." He's like, "What?" He's like, "I have a ton of discs." He's like, "I haven't played in a while, but he's like, and I mentioned to him, I was like, "Let's go play." He's like, "Okay." So he said that he was going to bring his disc the next day. So he did. And then there was a park not far away, and it was going great. We were having fun, getting to know each other. And got to hole 16, and I threw out of bounds into water. This ditch that I threw into the water was like easily 10 to 15 feet deep. Not the water was 15 feet deep, but like the trench that it was in went down really low, and the water level was really low. But it was one of my favorite discs. Like, I could not leave this disc, and it was very obviously like right there. I could see it. So very arrogantly, I was like, "I'm athletic. I can do this." I hopped down to this ditch, immediately landed on like some soft mud, and slid in both hands and wrists, both my feet and my butt just went right into the mud. And I had to stop myself. I almost slid all the way down into the water. It was pretty intense. But then eventually got my balance, got up, got the disc. It was great. Arrington jumped to my rescue.
Like the knight he is.
Yes. And I went and I climbed up some roots, and then he stuck his hand out with my muddy hand and all and helped pull me up.
It was like that scene from like The Lion King, except he didn't push you over
except for
the
he
side.
wasn't Scar that was throwing me into the stampede.
Wildebeest, yeah.
But he saw immediately the problem that I was in, because I'm in a rental car and my butt was covered in like this, like
the entire back of your pants was covered in like clay. Like it was like someone had dipped you in like cement.
It was like sediment. Yeah. It was intense and smelled terrible, by the way. And so he's like, "Hey, I happen to have," I was like, "I brought an extra pair of pants just in case a scenario like this happened to me." And I was like, "Dude, I cannot take your pants." And he's like, "It is totally fine." And he was like, giving me all these reasons why it was okay for him to like give these pants to me. And I felt terrible, but I desperately needed them, because if not, I was going to ruin my rental car. And so
came to Texas.
Yeah.
Stole pants.
Yeah. So he ended up giving me the pants. I found a restroom, got changed. He was a knight in shining armor, and I ended up Apple paying him money, by the way. I didn't just steal him pants.
It was just
he did not want to take the money, though.
I know. I love this story because this encapsulates so many things about you that I think are just very endearing.
But I still had a blast.
You had a blast. You saved your disc.
Yeah, I saved the disc. That was important. You
became friends with a bunch of people that you didn't know before.
That's right.
It's Steven through and through.
Yeah. And I had a great time, Arrington. You're great.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry, were there other guys you want to talk about?
Oh, yeah. I don't even know if he listens to the podcast, but I still want to call him out. His name is David. Super cool guy. He and I could probably talk forever because we were both talkers. And I think I really resonated with him because I kind of have when I was younger, I was what seemed to be overly vulnerable with people. Like I often told too much details about my life.
Yeah, like an overshare.
Yeah. And I think when I was younger, it was more of like I didn't know how else to relate to people other than do that. But as I got older, I learned to appreciate it, because what happened is I noticed that when I, in the right way, was vulnerable with people and told them sensitive parts about my life, it created an opportunity for someone to feel comfortable enough to share theirs with me. And I think David was very much that way. Like, he and I hit it off right away. He has no idea about Synchrony. And we were having a conversation, and we were just being vulnerable and talking to each other. And he was just a really cool guy.
Yeah.
So I'm going to come back to Texas, and you're going to show me some good barbecue.
It's a date.
That's right.
It was amazing. We interacted with some incredible people. So I think I want to end with this. If you are a single person and you are not looped into singles ministry in your area, and there is one, if you have a singles ministry that's active, please consider going and becoming part of that.
Yep.
And immersing yourself in that. If you know, you bring a unique component to that community that is so important. Your unique giftings and capabilities and personality is going to bless other single people in that community. What we saw was like, there was just this huge diversity of backgrounds and experiences and personalities, and the connections people were making were so rich. That is so important, because singleness is hard. There's no way around that. It is difficult, and there is so much hurt because so many people are single because they have suffered some kind of tragedy or loss, right? You matter to other single people. And I would just encourage you, if you have the opportunity to go get involved in singles ministry, please do that. They are so passionate about helping people feel connected.
Yeah.
And you can, if you are attending a UPCI church, you can connect with the single adult ministry. They have great social media. They have Dr. Lorena Roscoe, who's a friend of ours, has an incredible podcast that you would bless you. There's just so much great stuff going on. It's worth it. If you are a part of the Apostolic Assemblies or the ALJC, I'm not as familiar with singles ministries, but I would just encourage you to talk to leadership and get involved and find opportunities. And if you're a married person listening to this, because we do have married folks that tune in, consider becoming a champion for your church's singles ministry.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you have to drive necessarily or take it on. But from what I saw, again, the people that were at this conference serving, many of them were married couples.
Yeah.
That were there making space for their single brothers and sisters to connect. And it was beautiful to see that. And I think that married people have to understand that singles are part of the body. They are a vulnerable part of the body that needs to be shielded and uplifted. And we need to step up and create space.
Yep.
So it was amazing. Texas District, just huge shout out to everyone involved in the singles ministry over there. They're doing incredible things. I know that the work that they're doing is going to reverberate in many other places around the country. I just can't thank them.
There's people that flew in from everywhere to go to this conference.
Yeah, all over the place. I mean, yeah, tons of travel, tons of expense to be there.
Yeah. A lot of people said that like Texas, and I don't want to knock any other conferences that might be doing it well, but the only experience we have so far is with Texas. Like, people were flying in from everywhere because they said that they heard that they're doing it well.
Yeah.
And that it's quality and that they're intentional, and people are willing to spend the money. Some people are able to spend the money and come and go to this conference.
Right.
And so it was worth their time, and everyone left glowing. You know? So, but I do want to give a special shout out to Brother and Sister Carter.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for encouraging us to come out there.
Yeah. And just welcoming us.
Yeah. And just welcoming us there and giving us the opportunity to help you guys and serve as much as we could. You guys are great.
Yeah.
And the whole Texas district is awesome.
They inspire us. I mean, you know, the Carters are a values aligned couple.
Yeah.
Doing values aligned work. And it just goes to show how powerful and impactful that can be.
Yeah.
They're beautiful to see work together. You know,
they are.
Their work together is just beautiful. They work in concert with each other. It was so beautiful. Sister Carter was in the altar near us at one point, and she said, "Oh, my husband's over there now." She said, "I like to be close to him in the altar." And I didn't see where he was, and she moved back over to be with him. And I was like, that's really cool, just because they're aware of each other and they support each other so vocally and vividly. They're a beautiful example of what we hope more people can experience.
And what I noticed too, last thing about the Carters, is that they flowed in the spirit together.
Yeah.
And I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah.
I saw him, he was up at the mic, and then she would get up there as well, and he would create space for her to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And I heard him say a couple things that I thought was awesome too. And it was saw how intentional he was from a husband's perspective, is he was starting to exhort about certain things or start to talk about certain things, and he goes, "Never mind, I'll let my wife talk about it."
Yeah.
Because he knew that was an area that she was extremely passionate about, or that he knew that she was particularly wanting to say. And I thought that was cool. You know, he was putting his wife first.
Yeah. They're an amazing couple. It was an amazing conference. I hope that we get to, attend again in the future if they'll have us back.
Yeah.
And if we got to see you there, we loved meeting you. Thank you so much for
thank you guys
hanging out with us.
And girls.
Yeah, it was. Thank you, Arrington, for Steven's pants.
Yep. They are fantastic pants.
Anything else you want to talk about?
No, but I think you have something to say.
Cool. If you haven't listened to last week's episode was a breakdown of the results of our From Singles to Shepherd survey, which was a survey that we gathered to provide data to pastors and leaders about the experience of loneliness. Thank you to everyone who's taken that and shared it.
Yes.
Please continue to share it. We'll put it back in the description of this episode. If you haven't listened to last week's, please go check it out. You can also go on our social media where I've got just, posts of the data breakdown available. I'm hoping to do a couple more things. Somebody reached out and asked for more printer-friendly versions of those.
Oh, cool.
Because they're in darker colors.
Yeah.
They said it would be great if these were in a lighter print color so that I can give them to my pastor who doesn't use technology.
Oh, that's fair.
And I was like, that's brilliant. So we'll try to put that out soon. I would like to put out a more detailed written summary of the data. So more to come on that.
Yeah.
But go check it out.
Hey, babe.
Yeah.
I love you.
I love you too.
We have to go deal with a crying baby.
Yeah, our kid just woke up.
We'll see you guys later. Bye.
Bye.